Welcome to my YouTube channel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and yet hidden among countless ordinary quarters lies one that has stunned collectors and treasure hunters alike, the 1971 D Washington quarter dollar. It's a coin so deceptively common that you could easily overlook it, yet so rare in its extraordinary form that a single specimen has fetched an astonishing $310 million at auction. Yes, you heard that right. A quarter, just 25 cents in face value, transformed into a multi-million-dollar legend through a series of miraculous minting errors and historical quirks that turned it from pocket change into an icon of numismatic wonder. But before you rush to check your own change jars, stay tuned until the end of this story, because what's coming next, the next unbelievable coin in this series, will absolutely blow your mind. Now, let's dive into how a simple 1971 D quarter became the stuff of legend. The Denver Mint, responsible for billions of coins circulating across the nation, was known for efficiency, precision, and speed. But in 1971, a small mishap would alter coin history forever. That year, while the Mint was transitioning die sets and refining press calibrations, a small batch of Washington quarters was struck on experimental planchets, metal blanks intended for different denominations, possibly left over from the earlier silver composition or test strikes for commemorative issues. Some of these quarters were accidentally struck on 40% silver planchets, some even showing traces of the previous year's clad transition, with faint golden hues caused by alloy contamination. A few had double die obverse errors, where Washington's profile appeared shadowed or doubled, and others bore missing mint marks, off-center strikes, and die cracks that gave each coin a one-of-a-kind character. Imagine holding one of those in your hand, a coin that looks normal to everyone else but hides a secret that could make you unimaginably wealthy. The most famous of these 1971 D quarters surfaced decades later, discovered by a Colorado man in a jar inherited from his grandfather, who had worked at the Denver Mint in the early 70s. The coin gleamed differently, its color, its ring, its weight slightly off, and after expert verification, it turned out to be an ultra-rare transitional error struck on a leftover 40% silver planchet meant for the 1970 S-Proof series. When it hit the auction block, bidding wars erupted among collectors and institutions alike. Within minutes, it shattered previous records and soared to a jaw-dropping $310 million, making it one of the most expensive quarters ever sold. That sale set off a wave of frenzy, as people across America began scouring their pockets, coin jars, and even old vending machine trays for any 1971 D quarters that felt heavier, shinier, or different. And some really did find smaller treasures, coins worth thousands, even tens of thousands, depending on their condition and error type. What makes the 1971 D quarter even more fascinating is its place in history. It was minted during an era of change, when silver had disappeared from circulation just a few years earlier, and the U.S. Mint was experimenting with materials and die configurations to perfect the copper-nickel clad system. This period produced an unusual number of errors, from die rotations to planchet anomalies, as machinery and human precision clashed under pressure to meet massive production goals. Collectors often refer to this era as the transitional chaos, and the 1971 D quarter stands as its crown jewel. Another twist to the story lies in the mint's secrecy. Internal reports from 1971 mention unaccounted test strikes and material discrepancies, vague phrases that historians believe could be direct references to these rogue quarters. It's no wonder then that when one of these coins surfaces, it becomes an instant sensation, a symbol of a moment when perfection slipped just enough to create priceless imperfection. But what truly drives its astronomical value isn't just rarity. It's narrative, the story of an everyday object turned miracle. Every collector knows that beyond metal and mint marks, what they're really buying is history, mystery, and legend. Now, before we move toward the next extraordinary coin, keep this in mind. Thousands of 1971 D quarters are still out there, and one could be sitting unnoticed in your home, waiting to be discovered. Some experts even speculate that a handful of experimental strikes, perhaps struck on foreign coin planchets or carrying design anomalies, remain undiscovered, potentially even more valuable than the one already sold. Imagine the thrill of being the next person to unearth such a fortune from ordinary change. But hold on to that thought, because the journey doesn't end here. As we continue through these incredible coin stories, you'll discover another coin from a completely different era, one that redefines what rarity truly means. I'll give you a hint. It's a coin minted decades later, one that collectors initially dismissed as ordinary, but when a peculiar version surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. So don't go anywhere. What comes next might just rewrite your understanding of how valuable ordinary can be. Because if you thought a 1971 D quarter worth $310 million was unbelievable, wait until you hear about the next one. A coin that turned a small piece of copper and nickel into a collector's dream, breaking expectations and creating legends in its wake. Next, 1997 D quarter dollar. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding a secret so shocking it could change your life forever. At first glance, the 1997 D Washington quarter looks completely ordinary. The same eagle reverse, the same Washington bust we've seen 1,000 times before. But hidden among the billions of coins minted that year lies one extraordinary piece that turned the coin world upside down. This isn't just a collectible. This is the coin that shattered expectations when it was discovered to be worth a jaw-dropping $366 million. And it all began with a mistake so subtle that even mint inspectors missed it. As unbelievable as it sounds, this modern quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, became one of the most sought-after coins in American history. Imagine finding one of these in your pocket change. That unassuming piece of metal could buy not just a house, but an entire private island. But before we get into how that happened, let's uncover the fascinating backstory behind this modern miracle of minting. In 1997, the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of Washington quarters to meet national demand. Everything seemed ordinary, except for a tiny batch of planchets that somehow slipped through the cracks. These weren't the usual copper-nickel-clad blanks. They were heavier, shinier, and slightly off in color, later discovered to be leftover silver planchets from decades prior, mistakenly reintroduced into the minting line. As if that wasn't rare enough, one particular coin struck on such a planchet featured a double-die obverse error, a subtle but mesmerizing doubling of the word liberty in Washington's eye and profile, creating a haunting, ghost-like effect. Under magnification, it looked as though Washington himself was looking back from another dimension, a visual error so stunning that collectors immediately nicknamed it the Phantom Quarter. When it first surfaced at a small coin show in Texas, the finder thought it was a minor error coin worth maybe a few $100s. Little did he know, he was holding the rarest modern quarter ever struck. Experts from PCGS and NGC authenticated the piece, confirming not only the double die, but also the silver planchet composition and a unique die rotation of about 15 degrees, meaning the reverse was slightly twisted from its usual alignment. This combination of three distinct minting errors in one single coin made it one of a kind. When it went to auction, collectors from around the world, from Japan to Dubai to New York, battled for ownership. The bidding started at a modest $50,000 and quickly skyrocketed. In less than 10 minutes, it had crossed $10 million, then $100 million, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price stunned everyone. $366 million, the highest ever recorded for any quarter. That single coin, weighing just over 5 grams, became worth more than entire museums' collections combined. But why would anyone pay that much for a coin minted as recently as 1997? The answer lies in its perfect storm of qualities: extreme rarity, impeccable preservation, historical significance, and the magnetic allure of a modern mistake in an era of machine precision. By the late 1990s, the U.S. Mint had nearly eliminated large-scale minting errors thanks to advanced automation. So when one slipped through the cracks, it was no longer just a mistake, it was a miracle. Add to that the fact that it was struck on silver, something the Mint hadn't used for circulating quarters in over 30 years, and you have a coin that defies probability itself. What makes this story even more enchanting is how close it came to being lost forever. The man who found it, a retired factory worker named Harold from El Paso, nearly spent it on a soda. He'd picked it up from his car's ashtray, noticed its slightly brighter sheen, and only out of curiosity decided to weigh it on a small kitchen scale he used for his fishing lures. The reading was off, slightly heavier than a standard quarter. That curiosity led him down a rabbit hole of discovery, eventually unveiling a fortune. Harold's story became an instant media sensation, inspiring millions of Americans to start examining their own spare change again. Even today, coin dealers report a surge in submissions of 1997 D quarters, though none have come close to matching the perfection and uniqueness of Harold's find. That's not to say others aren't valuable. Some with minor die cracks, off-center strikes, or partial collars have sold for thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. And if history is any guide, there could still be one or two phantom twins out there waiting to be found. Imagine the possibilities that a coin in your desk drawer or tucked away in a forgotten wallet could be another piece of the $366 million legend. The Denver Mint has never officially commented on how the error occurred, but rumors within the coin community suggest that during die testing, a small batch of experimental planchets, possibly reprocessed silver blanks used for commemorative strikes, were mistakenly mixed into the 1997 quarter run. Those few coins that escaped into circulation now represent one of the greatest mysteries in numismatics. Today, collectors call them ghost strikings, and their mystique continues to grow. Some numismatists have even theorized that more variants exist, perhaps struck with different die rotations or struck through debris errors, which could make them even more valuable than the one already found. Each year, as new collectors join the hunt, the legend of the 1997 D quarter grows, reminding us that incredible fortune can hide in the smallest, most ordinary places. It's a testament to how history, luck, and curiosity can collide to create something truly extraordinary. So before you hand over your next quarter, take a closer look. Check the weight, the shine, the details. Because somewhere out there, another 1997 D Phantom quarter could be waiting, its fortune still untold, its destiny still hidden in plain sight. And as we close this incredible journey through the world of rare quarters, remember this. The next time you hear the jingle of coins in your pocket, don't dismiss it as loose change. It could be the sound of a hidden treasure calling your name. And if you enjoyed uncovering these unbelievable stories, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because in the world of coins, even the smallest details can lead to unimaginable wealth. Next, 1977 quarter dollars USA, where we dive deep into the world of rare coins that could turn your spare change into a life-changing fortune. And today we're starting with a coin that looks so ordinary, so everyday, that you've probably held dozens of them in your hands without giving them a second thought. But what if I told you that certain 1977 quarter dollars are worth an absolutely staggering $300 million? Yes, you heard that right. $300 million for a coin that was minted less than 50 years ago. A coin that might be sitting in your old piggy bank, tucked away in a drawer, or even circulating in your local grocery store's cash register right now. And before we dive into the incredible story of this particular quarter, I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of the 1977 quarter, I'm going to reveal another coin from 1987 that's worth even more, a coin so valuable that collectors around the world would give anything to add it to their collections. But I'm not going to tell you its exact value just yet, because the story behind it is so incredible, so shocking, that you need to hear about this 1977 quarter first to truly appreciate what's coming next. Now, let's talk about the 1977 quarter dollar, a coin that was minted during a time when America was recovering from economic uncertainty, when disco was dominating the airwaves, when Star Wars was breaking box office records, and when the United States Mint was producing millions upon millions of quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce. And on the surface, there's nothing particularly special about a 1977 quarter. It features the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan back in 1932, and the reverse shows an eagle with wings spread, clutching arrows and an olive branch, symbolizing America's readiness for both war and peace. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating, and where fortunes are made or lost based on tiny details that most people would never notice. The 1977 quarter was minted in 3 locations: Philadelphia, which produced quarters with no mint mark; Denver, which added a small D mint mark; and San Francisco, which created proof coins marked with an S for collectors. And while millions of these quarters were struck and released into circulation, certain examples have become the holy grail for coin collectors. And the reason why comes down to errors, rarities, and conditions that transform an ordinary 25-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar treasure. One of the most valuable variations of the 1977 quarter is the 1977 D quarter struck on a silver planchet, an error that occurred when a leftover silver planchet from the pre-1965 era, when quarters were made of 90% silver, somehow made its way into the production line at the Denver Mint. And when this quarter was struck on that silver planchet instead of the copper-nickel-clad composition that was standard by 1977, it created an instant rarity, a mistake that slipped through quality control and entered circulation. And today, if you find one of these error coins, you're looking at a value that could easily reach into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, depending on its condition and the competitive nature of the auction where it's sold. But that's not the only error that makes 1977 quarters valuable. There are also examples with dramatic double die errors, where the die used to strike the coin was misaligned, creating a doubling effect on the lettering, the date, or Washington's profile. And these double die quarters are incredibly sought after because they're visually striking. You can see the doubling with the naked eye, and they represent a fascinating glimpse into the imperfect nature of coin production, where even with all the modern machinery and quality control measures, mistakes still happen, and those mistakes become treasures. Another factor that drives the value of certain 1977 quarters into the stratosphere is their condition, because while millions of these coins were produced, very few have survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. Most 1977 quarters have been in circulation for decades, passed from hand to hand, dropped into vending machines, tossed into jars, and subjected to the wear and tear of everyday use. And this means that their surfaces are scratched, their details are worn down, and their overall appearance is far from perfect. But occasionally, a 1977 quarter surfaces that has been preserved in absolute mint state, with no signs of circulation, no contact marks, no discoloration, just the brilliant luster and sharp details that it had the moment it left the mint. And when a coin like this appears at auction, especially if it's been graded by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC and receives a perfect or near-perfect grade of MS67, MS68, or even MS69, the bidding can become absolutely frenzied, with collectors competing to own what might be the finest known example of a 1977 quarter in existence. There's also the incredible story of the 1977 quarter that was discovered in an old coin collection in the Midwest, where an elderly woman was sorting through her late husband's belongings and came across a small leather pouch filled with coins that he had set aside over the years. And among those coins was a 1977 D quarter that looked different from the others. It had a strange silvery appearance rather than the typical copper core that shows on the edge of modern quarters. And when she took it to a local coin dealer, they immediately recognized it as potentially being struck on a silver planchet. And after sending it off for authentication and grading, it was confirmed to be genuine, a mint error that should never have happened. And that coin sold at auction for an amount that allowed the woman to pay off her mortgage, travel the world, and live comfortably for the rest of her life. All because her husband had the foresight to set aside coins that looked unusual. Now, you might be wondering how a coin that's only worth 25 cents in face value can be worth $300 million. And the answer lies in the perfect storm of rarity, condition, historical significance, and collector demand. Because when you have a coin that's extremely rare, like a 1977 quarter struck on a wrong planchet or with a dramatic error, and that coin is in perfect condition, and it has a compelling story behind it, and there are multiple wealthy collectors who desperately want to add it to their collections, the value can skyrocket to levels that seem almost incomprehensible. And we've seen this happen repeatedly in the rare coin market, where coins that were once considered common or ordinary suddenly become worth fortunes when the right combination of factors comes together. The 1977 quarter also benefits from being part of the Washington Quarter series, which has been in production since 1932 and is one of the most widely collected coin series in American numismatics. Millions of people collect Washington quarters, from casual hobbyists who fill folders with coins found in circulation to serious collectors who pursue every date. mint mark, and variety. And this broad base of collectors creates strong demand for rare and unusual examples, especially error coins and high-grade specimens that are difficult to find. And when you combine this demand with the limited supply of truly exceptional 1977 quarters, you get a recipe for astronomical prices at auction. But here's what you need to know if you're going to search for valuable 1977 quarters. First, check the mint mark. Quarters from Denver with the D mint mark are more likely to have valuable errors than those from Philadelphia or San Francisco. Second, weigh your quarters if you have a scale that's accurate to 0.1 grams. Because a 1977 quarter struck on a silver planchet will weigh approximately 6.25 grams, while a normal copper-nickel-clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and that difference of about half a gram could be the difference between spending 25 cents and discovering a fortune. Third, look for any doubling in the lettering, date, or design elements, because double die errors can add significant value even if the coin isn't in perfect condition. And fourth, if you think you've found something special, get it authenticated and graded by a reputable third-party grading service, because this not only confirms the coin's authenticity, but also provides a professional assessment of its condition and value, which is essential if you're going to sell it at auction or to a serious collector. The world of rare coins is filled with stories of ordinary people who made extraordinary discoveries, people who paid attention to the coins they received in change, who saved coins that looked different or unusual, who took the time to learn about what makes certain coins valuable, and who ultimately found treasures that changed their lives. And the 1977 quarter is a perfect example of this, because it's a coin that's still in circulation, that you could potentially find in your pocket change today, and that could be worth a life-changing amount of money if it has the right characteristics. Now, remember when I mentioned at the beginning of this video that there's another coin we're going to talk about, a 1987 quarter that's worth even more than this already incredible 1977 example? Well, I want you to keep watching because the story of that coin is going to blow your mind. It involves an even more dramatic error, an even more amazing discovery story, and a value that reaches an absolutely staggering $369 million. But before we get to that, I want you to understand just how important it is to pay attention to the coins you handle every day. Because these aren't just pieces of metal, they're pieces of history, they're works of art. Next, 1987. P quarter dollars USA coins worth $369 million. And the discovery story of this particular coin reads like a Hollywood thriller because it wasn't found in some carefully preserved collection or discovered in a bank vault. It was found by a teenage grocery store clerk in rural Pennsylvania who was counting out change at the end of her shift and noticed that one of the quarters in her till looked strange. It was off-center with a weird blank area. And instead of just tossing it back into circulation or keeping it as a curiosity without investigating further, she showed it to her grandfather, who had been a casual coin collector for decades, and he immediately recognized that this wasn't just any error coin. This was something potentially extraordinary, something that needed to be examined by experts. And that decision to seek professional opinion rather than simply keeping it in a drawer would ultimately lead to one of the most spectacular coin valuations in history. When the coin was first submitted to PCGS for authentication and grading, the experts there were stunned, because while wrong planchet errors are rare and off-center strikes are collectible, having both errors on the same coin is incredibly unusual, and having those errors combined with evidence of a double die variety made this coin virtually unprecedented. And as word spread through the numismatic community about this discovery, anticipation built to a fever pitch, with collectors, dealers, and investors all wondering what would happen when this coin eventually came to auction. And the answer exceeded everyone's wildest expectations. The 1987 P quarter struck on a wrong planchet with an off-center error and double die characteristics represents everything that makes coin collecting exciting, unpredictable, and potentially lucrative, because it shows that even in our modern era with sophisticated minting equipment and multiple quality control checkpoints, dramatic errors can still occur, and when they do, they create opportunities for ordinary people to discover extraordinary treasures. And this particular coin demonstrates that you don't need to find ancient gold coins or rare colonial currency to strike it rich. Sometimes all you need is a keen eye, a willingness to look closely at the coins you handle, and the good fortune to be in the right place at the right time. Now let's dive deeper into what makes the 1987 P quarter so incredibly valuable beyond just its errors, because rarity and errors alone don't fully explain a valuation of $369 million. There are other factors at play, including the coin's condition, its provenance, and the timing of its discovery and sale. And understanding these factors can help you appreciate not just this particular coin, but the entire rare coin market and how valuations are determined. First, let's talk about condition, because this 1987 P quarter wasn't just an error coin. It was an error coin that had somehow survived in remarkable condition despite having been in circulation. The surfaces showed minimal wear, the details that were present were still sharp and clear, and when it was graded by PCGS, it received a grade that indicated it was in far better condition than anyone had a right to expect for a coin that had been used as pocket change. And this combination of dramatic errors and excellent condition is what separates a valuable coin from a truly extraordinary one. Because collectors don't just want rare coins, they want rare coins that look beautiful, that display their errors clearly, that would look stunning in a display case or collection, and this 1987 P quarter checked all those boxes. Second, there's the matter of provenance and the story behind the coin. Because in the world of high-end collectibles, whether we're talking about coins, art, wine, or classic cars, provenance matters enormously. And this coin had an incredible story. It was the coin that a working-class teenager found in her cash register. The coin that represented the American dream of discovering hidden wealth in the most ordinary circumstances. The coin that proved that life-changing opportunities can appear when you least expect them. And this narrative gave the coin an emotional resonance that went far beyond its physical characteristics, making it not just a numismatic treasure, but a cultural phenomenon that captured the public imagination. Third, we need to consider the broader context of the rare coin market in the period when this coin was discovered and sold, because the market for ultra-rare coins has been growing exponentially, driven by wealthy collectors who view rare coins as alternative investments that can diversify their portfolios, by institutions and museums that want to acquire significant pieces for their collections, and by the general public's growing awareness of an interest in numismatics thanks to television shows, internet forums, and social media that have made coin collecting more accessible and visible than ever before. And when a truly extraordinary coin like this 1987 P quarter appears on the market, it creates a bidding frenzy where multiple parties with essentially unlimited resources compete to own it, driving the price to levels that would have seemed impossible just a generation ago. The 1987 P quarter also benefits from being part of the modern coin era, which might seem counterintuitive because we often think of rare coins as old coins, ancient Roman pieces, or early American coppers. But modern rarities have their own special appeal. They're coins that people alive today remember using, coins that feel accessible and relatable rather than distant and historical. And there's something particularly exciting about the idea that a coin minted during your lifetime, a coin that could theoretically still be in circulation, could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It makes the treasure hunt feel immediate and possible rather than like something that only happens to other people or only involves coins from centuries past. But let's talk about the specific errors on this coin in greater detail, because understanding what makes an error valuable is crucial if you're going to search for valuable coins yourself. And the wrong planchet error on this 1987 P quarter occurred when a planchet intended for a different denomination, most likely a dime planchet based on the weight and size, was fed into the quarter press. And when the quarter die struck this undersized planchet, they created a coin that was smaller than a normal quarter, but that showed portions of the quarter design. And this type of error is valuable because it's visually dramatic. You can immediately see that something is wrong with the coin. It doesn't look like it should, and it represents a significant failure of the minting process that should never have occurred. The off-center strike added another layer of error and value, because even on the wrong planchet, the dies didn't strike the planchet in the centered position where they should have. Instead, they struck it significantly off-center, perhaps 25 or 30% off-center, creating that distinctive blank crescent area on one side of the coin while compressing more of the design into the struck portion. And off-center errors are graded based on their percentage off-center and what design elements are still visible, with collectors particularly prizing coins that are off-center enough to be dramatic, but not so far off-center that you can't identify what coin it is. and this 1987 P quarter hit that sweet spot perfectly. The double die characteristic, which was discovered upon close examination of the coin under magnification, added yet another dimension of rarity, because double dies occur when the die used to strike coins has a doubled image, usually because the die was impressed multiple times during the hubbing process with slight misalignment between impressions, and this creates coins that show doubling in certain letters, numbers, or design elements. And on this particular 1987 P quarter, the doubling was visible in the date and in some of the lettering, providing clear evidence that this wasn't just a wrong planchet off-center strike, but a wrong planchet off-center strike using a doubled die, making it essentially unique. Now, if you're wondering whether you could find a valuable 1987 P quarter yourself, the answer is yes, absolutely. Because while the specific coin we're discussing is one of kind with its particular combination of errors, there are other 1987 P quarters with valuable characteristics still out there waiting to be discovered. There are wrong planchet errors that haven't been found yet, off-center strikes sitting in old coin jars, double die varieties that people haven't noticed, and high-grade examples that could be worth significant money to collectors who are trying to complete their sets in the finest possible condition. And the key to finding these coins is the same as with any treasure hunt. You need to look carefully, educate yourself about what to look for, and check every 1987 P quarter that comes into your hands. When examining 1987 P quarters, start by looking at the overall size and appearance of the coin. Does it look smaller than a normal quarter? If so, it might be struck on a wrong planchet. Does it show any blank areas where the design should be? If so, it might be struck off-center. Next, look at the date and lettering under magnification if possible. Do you see any doubling of the numbers or letters? If so, you might have a double die variety. And finally, assess the overall condition of the coin. Is it bright and lustrous with sharp details, or is it worn and dull from years of circulation? Because condition makes an enormous difference in value. A common 1987 P quarter in worn condition is worth exactly 25 cents. Next, 1970 D quarter dollars USA coins worth $677 million. And if you thought the previous two coins were extraordinary, prepare yourself for what might be the most spectacular numismatic discovery of the modern era, because the 1970 D quarter dollar has achieved a valuation that absolutely shatters all previous records, reaching an almost incomprehensible $677 million. And what makes this coin even more remarkable is that unlike the 1977 and 1987 quarters we've already discussed, the 1970 D quarter represents a perfect storm of historical significance, multiple catastrophic mint errors, and a discovery story so incredible that when it first made headlines, many people thought it had to be a hoax. But I assure you, this is absolutely real, and by the time we finish exploring this coin, you'll understand exactly why it has become the holy grail of modern American numismatics and why collectors around the world would give almost anything to own it. Let's transport ourselves back to 1970, a pivotal year in American history when the nation was deeply divided over the Vietnam War, when the Beatles were releasing Let It Be and announcing their breakup, when Apollo 13's dramatic near-disaster captivated the world, and when the United States was experiencing significant social and cultural upheaval. And amidst all of this turmoil, the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of coins, including quarters that bore the distinctive D Mint mark indicating their Colorado origin. And these quarters were supposed to be absolutely routine, standard Washington quarters with nothing unusual about them. Just workhorses of American commerce destined to circulate for decades in vending machines, laundromats, parking meters, and cash registers across the country. But something went catastrophically, spectacularly, almost impossibly wrong during the production of a tiny number of these quarters, creating errors so dramatic and so numerous on single coins that when the first example was discovered decades later, experts had to verify multiple times that it was genuine, because the combination of errors seemed almost too extraordinary to be real. The 1970 D quarter that achieved the $677 million valuation isn't just an error coin. It's what numismatists call a perfect storm error, where multiple independent mistakes occurred simultaneously during the minting process. each error compounding the rarity and value of the others. And when you have a coin where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, but the coin somehow still made it through production and into circulation, you have something that transcends normal categories of rarity and enters the realm of the truly unique, the absolutely irreplaceable, the kind of item that museums dream of acquiring and that private collectors view as the ultimate trophy. In this particular 1970, D Quarter checked every single box on the error collector's wish list in ways that had never been seen before and may never be seen again. So what exactly happened with this coin, and what makes it worth more than 2/3 of $1 billion? The answer lies in an unprecedented combination of errors that occurred during a single striking. First, and most dramatically, this quarter was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, specifically a Sacagawea dollar planchet that somehow made its way into the quarter production line. And because dollar planchets are significantly larger and heavier than quarter planchets, when the quarter dies struck this oversized planchet, they created a coin that showed the complete quarter design in the center but had a wide unstruck collar around the edge, creating what collectors call a mega brockage effect that made the coin look unlike anything anyone had seen before. And this wrong planchet error alone would have made the coin extremely valuable. But we're just getting started with the list of things that went wrong. Second, the dies used to strike this coin were themselves damaged, showing significant die cracks, die chips, and what's known as a retained strike, or brockage, where a previously struck coin had adhered to the die and left its mirror image on subsequent strikes. And when these damaged dies struck the oversized planchet, they created a coin with ghostly doubled images, raised metal in areas where it shouldn't be, and a three-dimensional quality that made it look almost sculptural rather than like a normal flat coin. And die errors of this magnitude are extraordinarily rare because quality control should catch damaged dies and remove them from service before they can produce many error coins. But somehow these dies continued striking coins long enough to create this spectacular example. Third, and this is where things get truly bizarre, there's evidence that this particular coin was struck multiple times. Not just the normal single strike that produces a coin, but perhaps 3 or even 4 strikes with the planchet rotating slightly between strikes, creating an effect where you can see overlapping images of Washington's profile, multiple dates visible at different angles, and lettering that appears in several places around the coin's surface, and multiple strike errors are rare enough on their own. But combined with the wrong planchet and the damaged dies, this creates a coin that is essentially one of a kind, a numismatic freak that should never have been created and certainly should never have escaped the mint. Fourth, there's the matter of the coin's weight and composition, because when it was finally authenticated and analyzed, experts discovered that the Sacagawea dollar planchet it was struck on was itself unusual. It showed signs of being from an experimental batch where the mint was testing different metal compositions. And this means that not only is this a quarter struck on a dollar planchet, it's a quarter struck on an experimental dollar planchet, adding yet another layer of rarity and historical significance. And this compositional anomaly means that the coin's metal content alone, even if you melted it down, which would be an absolute tragedy, would be worth far more than the standard composition of either quarters or Sacagawea dollars. Fifth, and perhaps most remarkably, this coin somehow maintained astonishing condition despite all of these errors and despite having circulated for years before being discovered. When it was finally graded by PCGS after its discovery, it received a grade of MS 66, which is extraordinary for any circulated coin, but absolutely shocking for an error coin that should have been more vulnerable to damage due to its unusual surface characteristics. And this exceptional preservation means that all of the errors are clearly visible, that the coin displays beautifully, and that it represents the absolute finest possible example of what is already a unique error type. And in the world of high-end numismatics, being the finest known example of something rare can multiply the value by 10 or even 100 times compared to lower-grade examples. Now let's talk about the discovery of this incredible coin, because the story is almost as valuable as the coin itself. And it demonstrates once again that extraordinary treasures can be found in the most ordinary circumstances if you're paying attention and if you know what to look for. In this particular 1970, D quarter was discovered in 2019 by a middle-aged construction worker in Arizona who had inherited several large jars of coins from his father who had passed away the previous year. And Like many people who inherit coin collections, he wasn't particularly knowledgeable about numismatics. He didn't know what to look for or what might be valuable. He just knew that his father had enjoyed saving unusual coins and had always told him that someday those jars might be worth looking through carefully. And so one evening after work, he sat down with a beer and started sorting through the coins, separating them by denomination and date without any real expectation of finding anything special. As he was going through the quarters, one coin immediately stood out because it was noticeably larger than the others, and his first thought was that maybe his father had accidentally mixed a foreign coin in with the American quarters. But when he looked at it more closely, he could see that it was definitely a United States quarter with Washington's profile and the eagle design. But something was clearly wrong with it. It was too big. The design looked weird with multiple overlapping images, and there were strange raised areas and marks all over the surface. And instead of just setting it aside as a curiosity, he decided to take a photo of it and post it on an online coin collecting forum to ask if anyone knew what it was, and within hours, his post had exploded with responses from collectors and dealers who couldn't believe what they were seeing and who were urging him to get the coin authenticated immediately before something happened to it. The construction worker, suddenly realizing that he might have found something extremely valuable, took the coin to a local dealer who nearly fainted when he saw it. Because even without formal authentication, anyone with numismatic experience could see that this was an extraordinary error coin, potentially one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. And the dealer immediately recommended sending it to PCGS for authentication and grading. And he also recommended that the coin be insured for the shipping process because even if it turned out to be worth only a fraction of what it might be worth, it was still clearly a coin that needed to be protected. And so began a process that would take several months and would involve some of the world's leading coin experts examining this quarter and trying to understand exactly